She does a lot for your family. Mother's Day is your chance to show her you see it, with a gift from a brand trusted for generations to help people get the moment right. 1-800-Flowers. With double blooms from 1-800-Flowers, buy 1 dozen roses and get another dozen for free. It's a bigger gesture, backed by 50 years of experience delivering fresh flowers, so you can feel confident sending something that lands. Show up for her with double blooms at 1-800-Flowers.com/Spotify. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/Spotify.
Badass of the Week is produced by High Five Content and $7 Productions. April 21st, 1526. The dust-choked plains of Panipat are vibrating with a sound that feels like the end of the world. Across the horizon, nearly 100,000 warriors, spearmen, hardened veterans, they're screaming for blood. But it's the vanguard that freezes the defenders. A thundering wall, 1,000 war elephants, moving like a gray, unstoppable earthquake, their backs bristling with archers. In the center of the defensive line, Zahir-ud-Din Muhammad Babur stands atop his command post, watching the oncoming onslaught. His men are terrified. They're outnumbered 10-1, huddled behind a makeshift barricade of 700 ox carts lashed together with leather ropes. They can feel the ground shaking. They can hear the trumpeting of the beasts that are about to crush them into the dirt. But Babur isn't just a warlord. He is a man who has lived a dozen lives. Born a prince of the Timurid Empire, he lost his kingdom twice before he was 20. He spent years wandering the mountains of central Afghanistan, sleeping under a single cloak while his mother hunted for their food. He is a poet, a writer, and a scientist who obsesses over innovation. And today, he has brought a secret from the West that India has never seen. Babur raises his hand, and the heavy canvas curtains are pulled back from the gaps between the wagons. The morning sun glints off the bronze muzzles of Ottoman cannons and the long barrels of matchlock arquebus. Fire! The air is suddenly torn apart by a sound louder than 1,000 elephants. A ripple of thunderous cannon fire and rhythmic, stinging volleys of gunfire explode across the field. Iron balls and lead shot tear through the air, slamming into the charging front ranks and dropping elephants and men in screaming heaps. The battlefield becomes a chaos of smoke and sulfur. The war elephants, beasts that have dominated Indian warfare for centuries, stop in their tracks. They have never heard this sound before. Blind with terror, the massive animals turn and bolt, charging back into their own infantry and trampling their own army into the mud. In a single afternoon, Babur didn't just win a battle. He used science and steel to build the foundation of the Mughal Empire. Hello, and welcome back to Badass of the Week, the show where we tell the badass history of badasses. My name is Ben Thompson, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Dr. Pat Larash. And Pat, I am looking forward to the character that we're going to talk about today. I think it's going to be pretty good.
Oh, I'm looking forward to. This is good, doesn't even cover this character. Our guy today is a textbook example of what happens when you take Tamerlane and Genghis Khan and mix them together, actually kind of literally, because he's actually descended from both of them. and you give that person the 16th century equivalent of a survivalist mindset and a few crates of experimental heavy weaponry.
Yes. So we are going to talk about Babur. And Zahir-ud-Din Muhammad Babur he's special. We've covered a lot of conquerors and things like that on the show. And, I feel like we haven't done Mongols yet. We haven't done Tamerlane yet. So what better way to start this than by kind of combining them together, as you said. He's descended from both Genghis Khan, I believe on his Anyway, he's descended from both of them.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
he's not just special because he is, one of these great steppe nomad conquerors on horseback, defeating all enemies before him. But he also wrote a memoir, which is unique.
Yes.
And he basically, his memoir is really interesting because it talks about his great victories, but it also is like, I spent my 20th birthday hiding in a cave eating wild berries because I lost my kingdom. And he says, he spends a lot of time about how much he misses the melons from his hometown because they don't have good melons in the kingdoms that he was conquering.
Yeah, he talks about melons a lot. He likes his melon, and he puts a lot of himself into the memoirs. He is he's just there. Sometimes he's kicking ass, and sometimes he's more complicated. There's a moment where he's on this hill, and there's a tomb of some guy whom he knows whom he considers a heretic, and he says, "Well, it was a nice hill. It's a great view. I don't think a heretic should have a tomb there." So he orders the tomb destroyed. And then he says, I had the tomb destroyed. And then I sat on the hill and basically had an edible. So who is
He's
this
into
guy?
mushrooms too. He does eat a lot of mushrooms.
Yeah. And the thing is, okay, he's complicated, and I also kind of want to hang out with him.
Yes.
So he loves poetry, gardens. He loves swimming across rivers for fun. And then on the other hand, he also will chain 700 wagons together, pack them with gunpowder, and just completely obliterate a 100,000 man army before lunchtime.
Yes.
And okay, so his memoir, even the boring parts of his memoir are badass in their own way if you put them in context. So in some places, there are parts that actually modern readers can just skip over unless you're a specialist. But he just lists name after name after name. But it's because he wants to credit everyone who deserves it.
Right.
Which I think is pretty nice.
It's nice.
Pretty badass.
Yeah. And the people that kind of followed him would have followed him anywhere, right? They loved this guy.
Yeah.
And he's interesting because he is this kind of zero to hero story, except he goes to zero, he resets to zero 4 different times. And he continues conquering and trying to build his empire back up again. So, okay, where do we start when we want to talk about Babur? This guy's family tree is like a who's who of famous conquerors from history. So maybe that's the place to start.
Yes. And very specifically, we zoom into age 12 in a place called Fergana. And a freak accident involving a shed full of pigeons that changes the course of history.
Only on Badass of the Week do the Mongol conquests of India begin with a pigeon coop. So we're gonna take a break, and we're gonna get back. We're gonna talk about how pigeons change the course of the Indian subcontinent forever. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to Badass of the Week. We are talking about Babur and the Mughal conquest of India. So, all right, let's set the scene here for the beginning of this. It is 1494. So, for context, this is the 2 years after the end of the Reconquista and Christopher Columbus and all of that. We are on the other side of the world, however. We're in the Fergana Valley, which is kind of Uzbekistan, modern day like Uzbekistan, India, that region, but Afghanistan. And this is this beautiful, lush area that's full of Tamerlane's descendants, these Timurid princes. They're all trying to stab each other. They're all warlords trying to carve out different pieces of this valley for themselves. Babur is 12 years old. He is being trained to be a warrior, but he also loves calligraphy and poetry. And so he's writing his stories. He's probably practicing some archery, and news comes down involving the pigeon coop. So, Pat, how does this pigeon coop come into play here?
So, yes. So there's news involving the pigeon coop and Babur's father. And, okay, this is Badass of the Week. So could it be an epic death in battle or a noble sacrifice? Actually, Umar Sheikh Mirza II was literally hanging out in his pigeon coop. I would just like to make a little shout out to our dear friend of the podcast, Sharami.
Yes, the carrier pigeon Sharami, pigeon badass from our show. Yes, so Umar Sheikh Mirza II is Babur's father. He's the guy in charge here. He has built a very elaborate pigeon coop on the edge of a very steep ravine. And as he is in the coop, the ravine gives way. The pigeons fly off. The king of Ferdana goes down with the shed, falls off this ravine. And it's a very inglorious, ignominious end. But now Babur, 12-year-old Babur, is the king. And he's kind of walking into a Shark Tank.
Yeah, he's a 12-year-old king in 15th century Central Asia. And yeah, it's like he just has like a big sign on his forehead that says, "I am chum." Just walking in, like he's a piece of bacon walking into a pack of hungry wolves or something. And he's got all these uncles and cousins who think maybe Babur should go the way of his father.
Yes.
Permanently.
Yes. So there's lots of cousins. Everybody's kind of scrabbling to rebuild Tamerlane's empire. And we haven't talked about Tamerlane yet on the show, but he's this Genghis Khan style conqueror who we will do at some point on the show. But he kind of had conquered out this very large empire in Central Asia and was this unstoppable, invincible warrior. Now he's gone. He left a lot of descendants who are all fighting over his empire. And, very Game of Thrones style. They're all too busy killing each other to unify or do anything useful. Now, Babur takes over, and there are all of these uncles and other descendants, and they're like, all right, this kid's 12, like, we got this. We're going to take him over. But they're kind of amassing their forces, and they realize very quickly that they've underestimated Babur. Because he doesn't just outmaneuver the political people trying to steal his throne. He's able to secure his throne, secure some powerful nobles, secure part of the army. And he decides that in order to, have people respect him as a warrior, even though he's so young, like he needs to go to war. So he sets his sights on Samarkand, which was kind of the Rome of Central Asia. It was built by Tamerlane. And this is kind of the big prize. This is Tamerlane's old capital. It's very wealthy because there's a lot of all the good plunder from around. I think he pulled the gates off the city of Delhi and put them in Samarkand. This is kind of this is the capital of Tamerlane's empire. And if you want to inherit Tamerlane's empire, you have to hold this. And he's like, that's where I'm going to start.
Yeah. Take Samarkand, no big deal. He's 14. I mean, what are people doing at age 14? Okay, my students are maybe they're stressing over a Latin quiz. They're also doing things like, running for student council, being captain of the soccer team.
When I was 14, I really thought I could conquer Samarkand also.
Okay, yeah, fair. Okay, so imagine yourself as a 14-year-old. And instead of maybe just imagining that you could lead a siege and take this huge city, Babur actually does lead a siege and takes the city. And so he's there sitting on the throne of his ancestors. He's actually literally king of the hill.
Yes, he becomes the ruler of Samarkand. He sits on Tamerlane's throne for like 7 months.
Okay, which to be fair is 7 months more than I have been ruler of Samarkand. Give this guy some credit.
That's fair.
Yeah. Yeah. And so he's got Babur-sized problems and he's in Samarkand, but what's going on in Fergana? His old rivals, all those uncles and cousins and, whatevers, they're looking at his old kingdom of Fergana. So Babur is in Samarkand and he's thinking, I have to go back to Fergana to deal with that stuff there. But he still has soldiers back in Samarkand and they think, okay, the kid's gone. We'd rather work for someone else. And they lock the gates behind Babur.
Right. And that's like, I love this because he's marched out of Fergana. He's taken Samarkand. He should be like the king of the whole empire now. Everybody should just kind of submit to him. Fergana rebels against him thanks to like the machinations of his, of Littlefinger or whoever. He leads an army out of Samarkand to go back and retake Fergana. But then the second he leaves Samarkand, they lock the doors behind him. And now he's standing here in the middle of the road Samarkand's behind him. He can't go back there. Ferghana's in front of him. He can't go there. He's got his small, like, little retinue of guys with him, but he has no kingdom, no army, a very small group of friends, and half a pigeon coop to his name now. And he's just like, what is this? This isn't how this is supposed to work.
Yeah. So, Ben, you said he reset from, hero back to zero several times. This is one of the resets to zero. He spends the next few years, I think we've got like a montage here, like a bandit life in the mountains montage. And he's, okay, to be fair, he's kind of a bandit king. He's very cultured when he hangs out like a bandit in the mountains because he's,
He does have to rob some people out of his
He does. Yeah, but, he's keeping his memoirs. He writes about how he didn't even have a tent. He's sleeping in the snow. He's sharing a single cloak with his mom. He's eating whatever he can hunt. Kind of reminiscent of Mithridates' young adulthood, if you ask me.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah. And so, yeah, he's got his mom with him. His mom comes to join him and like a small group of people. And he's just basically saying like he's out in the wilderness living in a tent. And his mom's having to like help him catch food and cook it and stuff. And he's like, he writes in his memoirs, he says like, this helps build character. This is good for me. Wandering around the hills of Tajikistan, meeting old ladies and telling them and having them tell him stories about Genghis Khan.
Hey, yeah.
Yeah, great. He's it works out, right? Hopefully for him. Hopefully that's not the end of the episode.
Yeah, things do work out. He sees opportunity in the form of a city called Kabul.
I've heard of it.
He realizes, yeah. Yeah, he's thinking, okay, the north, okay, that's a mess. Never mind. What about the south? So he crosses the Hindu Kush Mountains with about 300 guys, most of whom are barefoot and carrying clubs, which I think also builds character and muscle tone.
Yes.
And somehow through sheer, I am the tiger energy, he takes the city.
Yes. So Babur is marching south and he's got his small group of people. Like you said, they've got basically no weapons, no armor. They're marching south to Kabul, but Kabul at the time is in like complete disarray. And there were, the different tribes are fighting and he kind of is able to come in there and move into Kabul and take advantage of the disorder there. And because he's Timurid, it's kind of he's kind of this unifying person. And he is like a very charismatic speaker. He's a very charismatic politician. You say, I am the tiger, but like that's what he called himself. Like he said he was the tiger.
Yeah.
And he comes in there and takes Kabul with 300 guys, which seems just really wild.
Unlikely, yes.
Yes. And so he gets out of the mountains, moves south into Afghanistan, and he takes Kabul, which is a fortress. So now this is kind of where he kind of starts working on the Babur Nama, which is his memoirs. It's not just, Veni Vidi Vici. It is, it's kind of like a National Geographic like magazine. He gets into he draws sketches of things, of like animals and things that he'd seen when he was there that he didn't have back home.
Yeah. So I looked through, okay, I will admit I did not read all of the Babur Nama because it is rather long. And why is it long? So this guy, Babur, he has the soul of a poet, the mind of a general, but the eye of a biological scientist. He's obsessed with how the world works. He doesn't just say India is hot. He catalogs the directions of the winds. He catalogs the structure of a banyan tree. He makes observations about the migratory patterns of the birds, which is also giving Mithridates, someone else who observed the natural world and took notes.
Yeah. Yeah, like a warlord David Attenborough.
Yes, yeah. And he's making these observations, but then also maybe in the next paragraph, he'll pivot to something incredibly metal. I wanted to share a translation of a passage that stayed with me. He's writing this, it's from when he's about 20 years old. It's in his hiding in the mountains after losing everything era. And he writes, during my stay in those mountains, I walked for the sake of exercise, usually barefoot. My feet became so hard that rock and stone made no difference to them. Once, I saw a goat track and followed it. I had a cloak, and I sat down to rest, And I thought to myself, to live in such a state is better than to live in shame.
Right. This is, my feet became like stone is not the sort of thing you expect to see from like an emperor or a conqueror around this time. So he's very different. He's not born into royalty, even though he is forged by the terrain.
Yeah, he is forged by the terrain. And also from the point of view of building character, there's something about everything he writes that suggests that he appreciates everything, or he finds a way to appreciate everything, no matter how humble. There's one time he's just with some of his guys on the outskirts of a city in the middle of winter. It's cold. And he writes, "Someone brought me an old sheepskin coat, which I put on. And then they brought a cup of millet flour soup. Wow, it was good."
Right. And that's like the weird thing about this guy, right? Is that he kind of just seems like just a person in a way that a lot of people didn't want. A lot of kings and conquerors at this time period didn't want to be known. They didn't want to be just a person. They wanted to be a god, right? They wanted to be, God talks to me and I talk to people through God. And I'm the only person who could do it because I'm amazing. I'm like the greatest thing. I'm above all humans. And, they would expect somebody to bring them millet soup and be mad if they didn't, and this guy's like, yeah, it was really nice. And that guy got me some soup. He's pretty cool. This was his name.
Yeah. And it's millet soup. This is not a delicacy. This is humble peasant food made with just whatever you happen to have lying around.
Right. He just, even though he becomes king of these different areas. And like, the conquest of Kabul is interesting because like he has 300 guys when he marches down there. He's able to grow his army through mercenaries, but mostly through people who are disgruntled with the leadership in Kabul. And when he arrives, he has a pretty big army with him, and he does negotiate his way into being the ruler of Kabul. He's not from there, but he's just like, everybody hated the guy that was in charge. And he kind of gets up there and he's like, hey, I'm descended from Genghis Khan on my mom's side and Tamerlane on my dad's side. I am, I'll do a good job here. And he negotiates the removal of the king of that city, right? This is a person that people like because he's kind of cool about dealing with people. He also, he always focuses a lot on physical intensity as well. He's always trying to sharpen his mind, but he's trying to grow his army, he's trying to grow his empire, but he always tries to make himself stronger too. There's a story that he used to inspect the masonry on the walls of his city, and he used to train by the walls. It was the city wall, kind of had incline and decline as you went around the city wall, but he would pick up the story goes, he would pick up a fully grown man under each arm, and then he would run up and down the walls of the city. He would do a lap, carrying a guy under each arm.
Ooh, I'd love to see that in action.
An intense farmer's carry exercise or something.
Yeah.
So he was able to do this even later on into life. And so even though he becomes, he grows up into a middle-aged emperor, he, never skips cardio day. Yeah.
Yeah, this is kind of reminiscent of Milo of Croton, where you work out into your daily routine. I'm the emperor, and I'm also my own CrossFit trainer.
Yes.
Okay, I said he had a soul of a poet, so he actually is credited with inventing a new poetic meter called the Baburi, named after him, of course. And in the world,
but he didn't name it after himself. That's what separates him from an Alexander, where he didn't call it. He's like, this is my style. It's called Baburi. He was just started writing in a meter, and one of how Shakespeare stuff is all in meters and stuff. And they were like, oh, this is a new thing that he invented. We're just going to name it after him.
Yeah, yeah. And this meter, the Baburi or the Baburidin, it's actually kind of revolutionary as far as poetic meter and style goes. And most royal poetry at the time, it was written in Persian, and it was full of flowery language, over-the-top metaphors, And Babur, well, okay, he can appreciate that. But he wanted something that felt more like a cavalry charge. He wanted something to hit you fast, direct, and structurally unbreakable. And I said Persian was the elite, refined language of the arts. But instead, Babur chose to write in Chagatai Turkic, which is the language it's a language associated with the campfire, the saddle.
Is this what the regular people spoke? And this is perfect. This is like quintessential Babur, because he doesn't want to, he's going to write in the Vulgate, right? Like he's going to just write the, he's going to write and say, instead of, writing literature, he's just going to tell you like, hey, here's this cool kind of melon I found. And here's this bird that I ran into. And this guy gave me some soup and it was cool.
Yeah, this is old sheepskin coat verse.
Yeah,
that he's
you
writing,
don't come across that in Caesar's memoirs.
Well, no. I mean, he's writing in prose anyway. But he's what he's doing is he's saying that, hey, this speech that we associate with Central Asian warriors, it's rough, it's rhythmic, it's not flowery. And it's just as capable of beauty and poetic expression as these courtly, flowery Persian meters. So, yeah. And, some of the contemporary verse was, it's very loose, very rambling. But Babur, at some level, he's a military scientist. And the meter is a specific rhythmic structure, his meter, that, some syllables have to be long, some syllables have to be short. And it's often in a quatrain format called a rubai. And you either have a short, long, long, short, long, long pattern, or a long, short, long pattern. And it makes it sound like this percussive beat that sounds like the rhythm of a galloping horse.
That's cool.
Yeah. And it's very direct. And this directness is all over the place. And in his memoirs, there's a moment where he describes a skirmish, and he doesn't exaggerate his own prowess, like, hey, I'm awesome. What he does is he actually describes the physics of it. In one story, he talks about an enemy soldier who is wearing 2 layers of heavy mail. Babur shoots him with an arrow, and then he, makes the observation, this is almost like a clinical detachment. The arrow hit the man's neck with such force that it passed through both layers of armor and pinned the guy's head to his own shoulder.
Oh, that's a weirdly specific, interesting way to describe shooting somebody in war.
I guess it's like if a modern special forces commander didn't just write a memoir, but actually, invented like a new genre of rap music to tell his story because he needed a genre that was tough enough to handle the reality of what he was talking about. So that's, I don't know, I guess what Babur is doing with the Baburi meter. Yeah, he can describe the delicate scent of a rose or the exact taste of a fermented grape and then turn around and just give you a tactical breakdown of how to cut a guy in half. So he's a Renaissance man, but with a very 16th century Mongol, Central Asia edge. He's observing the world so he can take charge.
Very Jengar. I'm thinking about Jengar now.
Yeah, actually, yeah.
Probably read Jengar, I guess. This is
possibly, yeah.
The area, right?
He might very well have, yeah.
Okay, so this is kind of what he does when he gets a look at... So one thing we've established about Babur is that he is a conqueror and a warrior and a diplomat and a scientist and all of these interesting things. And so as a person who's like kind of a man of the world, he, in 1520... he gets a look at a new piece of technology that the world is kind of discovering, but hasn't quite figured out what to do with. And this is gunpowder. So, all right, he's in Kabul. He's got a steady supply of the melons that he likes. He's created a pipeline for those. He's got a base of operations, but he's also been like repeatedly like defeated and been living in the mountains by himself. He realizes that if he wants to kind of get ahead, he's going to use this to give himself an edge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it is indeed an edge. Most people in Central Asia and India are still fighting with compound bows, heavy cavalry, and honestly, sheer numbers. But Babur has these 2 guys, and you can think of them as like the Q branch of the 16th century. And since this is Babur, he makes sure to credit them by name, Ustad Ali and Mustafa. These are Ottoman Turkish artillery experts. And yes, they have access to gunpowder, which in context is, honestly, it's magic. It's terrifying, it's loud, it's messy, and it's technology that is sufficiently advanced to come across as magic for the generals who don't actually know what it is.
Yes. And so the Turks have developed gunpowder and have used it recently to great effect to capture Constantinople. They have these guns that will knock down walls, and they are kind of shopping them around. Hey, look, we've got this cool stuff. What do you think? So Babur sees it and he's obsessed. He's like, not only is he obsessed with, this is the magic thing that will give me the edge. He wants to know, how does this work? How can I use it? What can I do with it? What's the chemical reaction like? He wants to know everything.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
How did you guys use it? What do you do with it? How do you fight with it? How can I use this to make my thing better? And one strategy that he comes up with is something that the Ottoman Turks taught him. You get, cannons at this time are very big and heavy. So you could put, one of the easiest ways to transport them was to put them on a wagon. And he would get one of the things the Turks were doing that he decided he was going to adapt is putting cannons on wagons and to mass this firepower. And with this, he thinks, all right, this is going to give me an edge. This is a force multiplier. I can put a cannon on a wagon and drive it around the battlefield, and it's basically a tank.
This is his edge, or it's one of his many edges. The one edge he doesn't have is numbers. He doesn't have hundreds of thousands of men. But you know what? It doesn't matter how many guys the other army has. If you have a wall of cannons and muskets, then the other side's hundreds of thousands of soldiers is just a big target.
Right. And so, okay, he's got these guns. He's got the army that he's assembled in Kabul. He can't go back to Samarkand. He's, the Fergana Valley is not in, all of this it's a mess, right? You've got all of these warlords fighting all over it. The terrain is difficult because it's all mountainous. So he's like, what can I do with this? All right. He hears that to the south, the Delhi Sultanate is it's in the lowlands, right? You can drive a wagon. You can't drive a wagon with a cannon on it through the mountains of Uzbekistan and Tajikistan, but you can drive it through northern India in the flatter areas. And northern India has a lot of money, it has a lot of gold, and is very wealthy at this time. Now, on paper, this is a very dumb idea because the Delhi Sultanate is massively wealthy. He would be outnumbered by just an unbelievable margin if he marched his guys down there. He's got maybe like 10,000 guys, and there's like millions of people that live in India. So he's like, yeah, maybe I've got this new technology. I took Kabul with 300 guys. I just kept building my army along the way. Maybe I can do something like this. And one of the things that makes him think that is because the Sultan of Delhi is a guy at this time named Ibrahim Lodi. And Babur starts hearing word that the people of India are really sick and tired of Ibrahim Lodi, and they don't like him.
No, yeah. Ibrahim Lodi apparently was a classic tyrant, typical Disney villain. He was so paranoid and cruel that his own governors were actually sending secret letters to Babur saying, hey, could we ask a favor? Could you come invade us? We'll help. We just get rid of this guy.
Yes. So I'm sure heads on pikes were involved. We haven't.
I'm sure.
But yes. So Babur starts getting letters from nobles and ambassadors and advisors and things in India that are like, come to India. Like we'll help you. We just need to get rid of this guy. Maybe the reputation of Babur being a cool guy had kind of expanded there, and they were like, this guy sounds way better than our guy. Anyway.
Better boss.
Yes. So Babur's 43. He kind of is like, let's do this. I have a chance to do something kind of like, it would be like, that was the thing that made Tamerlane so well known and powerful and beloved among his people, was that he was able to conquer Delhi. He's like, well, I'm going to try to replicate what my ancestor did. So, all right, let's go and let's try to take Delhi. So he marches his army.
Yeah, it's 1525, and he gathers about maybe 12,000 men And which, okay, that's more people than I know personally, but it's still only 12,000 or so.
And that is bad numbers for this time period in this part of the world.
Yes. Because as you mentioned earlier, Ben, he's going up against an army of like 100,000 soldiers who are human and also 1,000 elephants.
Yes. So the Indian army has war elephants. And
war elephants.
Yes,
you can take that off your bingo chart.
That's right.
Yep.
The Indian army has war elephants. Babur does not have war elephants. He's got horses. He's got bow and arrows, but he's outnumbered 10-1, and he doesn't have elephants. He does, however, have cannon wagons. So, all right, let's kind of set the stage here. Now, we are heading south. Babur crosses the Indus River with his very small army. 10,000 is not a big army for Europe at this time, and we're talking East Asia at this point, where the armies are historically way larger than they are in Europe. He's writing poetry about how much he misses the cool mountain air of Kabul, how much he misses the melons from his hometown. He talks a lot about this. He's marching south, and he's going to head to this place called Panipat. Now, Pat, we are having an anniversary of Panipat right now.
It's
the 500-year anniversary, because we are looking at 1526, April 21st, 1526. So that's exactly 500 years ago. He heads down, and the Indian army, the Indian scouts recognize him. They see what's up. They send word to Ibrahim Lodi. Ibrahim Lodi forms an army that outnumbers Babur 10-1. Babur parks his guys in between these mountains, so he's got coverage on both sides, so he can't be flanked. He starts digging holes, and he starts chaining his wagons together. And Pat, we are going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to find out why this guy got the nickname the Tiger, and why that ended up sticking, and people didn't laugh at him when he called himself that. Mm-hmm. So stick with us. All right, welcome back. Before the break, we left Babur in the dust of northern India, staring down just wave after wave after wave of enemies. And this is about 500 years ago, almost exactly 500 years ago. This, on paper, looks like, if you were to look at an image of what this would look like, if you were to paint a picture of 10,000 guys being attacked by 100,000 with several hundred war elephants at the head of the army, this looks like it's about to be a massacre. It looks like a very, very poor decision.
Yes. And imagine the scene, go back 5 centuries ago. And, that morning you wake up April 21st, Ibrahim Lodi, the Sultan, okay, he's finally been baited into attacking. He's got this massive, slow-moving force of 100,000 soldiers and 1,000 war elephants.
1,000 elephants. Babur only has 10,000 guys, right?
Yeah. So that's what, 1 elephant for every 10 guys of Babur's?
Mm-hmm.
Did I do the math right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So to Sultan Ibrahim Lodi, Babur's army probably looks like a minor speed bump. It's just a fly running into your windshield, right?
Wait, what are you doing? And so he starts to attack at this place called Panipat, and Loki's just like, I'm gonna crush these guys with my elephants. Because the elephants it's not just, you have usually 4 or 5 people in a little basket on top of the elephant, and they can shoot arrows out and stuff. So just the war elephants are about equal in number to Babur's entire army. There was like 4,000 people, 5,000 people just on those elephants. Now, all right, Lodi's just like, all right, go squish these guys, go step on them, and we'll be home for dinner. So he starts to march on Babur, and Babur has 700 ox carts. And he has them all chained together using twisted rawhide. And behind those carts and inside those carts are, and they kind of span the entrance to the mountain pass that they're fighting in. And behind these carts and inside them are guys with matchlock rifles and cannons.
And this is the moment Lodi orders his cavalry to charge. The elephants are trumpeting. The ground is shaking. And Babur waits. He waits until they are right in the sweet spot. And then Babur gives the signal.
The sound of gunfire and cannon fire going off in 1526 must have seemed like magic to the enemy. The noise is a weapon. The elephants, the people, nobody had ever heard a gunshot before, had ever heard a cannon before. It wasn't a sound, it rumbles the ground. It's like a physical shockwave. And you have these metal tubes that are spitting fire, and people are dying from cannonballs and from rifle fire, and they can't see the bullets. They can't even see what's killing them. So this is not a glorious battle. This is terrifying sorcery. This is what, I don't know what this is, but the elephants especially disliked it intensely. Fire and thunder, and the elephants did what you and I would have done if we were being shot at with a cannon for the first time. They turned and they ran away. They couldn't crash forward through the wagons because the wagons are all chained together. So they turned back around, and kind of flashes of Hannibal's final battle at Zama, the elephants turn around and run directly towards the rest of Ibrahim Lodi's army.
Oof, it was ugly. And while Lodi's elephants were stomping his own infantry, Babur unleashed his secret sauce, the Tulugma. This is a classic Mongol Timurid flanking maneuver. He sends his lightning-fast horse archers around the sides to encircle the entire massive army of Ibrahim Lodi. Right.
So this becomes a nightmare immediately. The infantry, and Lodi's army is mostly infantry. Babur's army has a lot of cavalry. And so they're being kind of squished by their own elephants, being charged by their own elephants from the front. Men are running over each other, trying to get away from the elephants. It's just complete chaos. If you were in the back of this formation, you would have no idea what was happening. Like, what scared this away? What was that thunder? What was that sound I just heard? And when everybody kind of starts to turn to run away, they find themselves kind of surrounded by a wall of horse archers galloping around, shooting compound bows into your army. And you can't, if you're infantry, you can't deal with that, right? You can't catch these guys on the horses. You're just going to run at them until you get tired, and then you're going to get killed with an arrow. So if you were a spearman or a swordman in this army, there's nothing you can do. You can't attack the cannons, and you can't deal with these horse archers. The unbeatable army outnumbered their enemies 10-1. They collapse. Ibrahim Lodi himself is killed in battle, and Babur, the guy who was a homeless bandit sleeping under a cloak with his mom decades earlier, becomes the Sultan of Delhi.
Yes. Okay, all of this is very badass up to this point. What happens next? Is he just going to rest on his laurels, sit on the throne, eat melons, eat some more melons, write some poetry? I mean, okay, he probably did some of that. But what's really badass is he walks into the palace and he says, look at all this gold and jewels. He gives it all away.
Yes. He becomes known as the Saint because I think I talked about this with Tamerlane. When Tamerlane captured Delhi, he pulled the golden doors off of the gates off the city and put them on his own capital. And Babur and his people loved him for it. All of the, Timur's people liked him. And Babur is like, kind of remembering this. And so he sees all of this gold assembled in Delhi. It's a very rich sultanate here. And he takes the gold and he gives it away, not to the people of Delhi, but to the people of Kabul who picked him, right? Who chose him, who let him into their city, gave him control, even though he didn't have like a huge army. They picked him to like be their leader, and they liked him, and he was good to them, and they were good to him. So he sends a silver coin to every man, woman, and child in Kabul. He keeps basically nothing for himself because he's not thinking about this stuff. He doesn't need things. He wants to have feet that are hard against stone. He wants to be able to shoot an arrow through a guy's armor. He wants to run around the parapets with a dude under each arm and then sit down and write poetry when he's done. And now he's the Sultan of Delhi, which is just a huge upgrade over the leader of Kabul.
You'd think, but Ben, we have to talk about the melons.
We do. We've mentioned the melons several times.
Yeah. Yeah. So what do melons mean to Babur? Well, the melon for Babur was the symbol of everything he had lost. In his homeland, back in Kabul, the melons were cold, sweet, and perfect. In India, he complains constantly that the fruit was terrible and the heat was oppressive.
It's not the heat, it's the humidity. Yeah, he's in northern India, and he's from the mountains. He's from the mountains of Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan. He doesn't like it there. He conquers India because it's powerful and rich, and it gives him the reputation of being one of the greatest conquerors to ever live. He defeats this massive army, takes the city, makes himself and his people rich and famous. But he's like, actually, I don't like it here. It's too hot. I don't like I don't like the food, It's like there's all this infighting among like the different, all the people that invited him to come. There's all this like political infighting and bickering. The culture is very different than the one that he was used to. And he's just like, it's kind of, relatable. He eventually like gets one of his favorite melons from Central Asia sent to him in India. And he writes about this. He's not one of these like super stoic, like I'm always badass and everything I do is awesome kind of guys. He basically writes and was just like, I've conquered the whole subcontinent, but I would have traded it all for a cantaloupe. And then he gets it and he starts eating it. And he says, I loved it. It was so good. I started crying when I was eating this thing. And
that's humanizing.
It is. He's like a real person in a way that some of these characters that we talk about don't seem to be. And having his own memoirs and his own words, it's very interesting. He's very open in a way that you don't see many people, even today, be.
Yeah. But I'm thinking if actually there's a moment in the Jangar epic where Jangar is crying and one of his buddies comes up to him and says, Jangar, why are you crying?
That's right. And I can't remember why it was, but it was just like, I
don't remember either. Yeah.
It was like, it was because like there was nothing left to conquer or something like that. Something like that. But
Okay. Nothing left to conquer, cantaloupes. Okay. It's okay to cry over cantaloupes.
Yes.
And honestly, like a good cantaloupe right in season, you get from one of those farmers market stands, sublime.
I believe it.
I would cry too.
I believe it.
Yeah.
I kind of want to try a Central Asian melon after having read about this so much. I hope it's better than the fermented mare's milk.
Yeah.
No, okay. He took Delhi, but this is the Indian subcontinent, and there's more than you have to be more than one guy. There's a movement to get this guy out of here, right? He is he's Muslim, and the large percentage of the people of India are not. You have this kind of component happening here. And also he's not from there. He's from Kabul. He doesn't understand the culture. He doesn't seem to like it that much. We need like we need a hero. We need an Indian hero to step up here and get these guys out of here and retake the subcontinent for our people.
Does a hero step up? Yes. There is a guy named Rana Sanga, and this is a man who, according to legend, had survived 80 different battle wounds. He was missing an arm and an eye and basically held together by sheer willpower and spite.
Yeah, Rana Sanga. He is old school, like gravelly voice, I imagine, just old warrior. He's gonna deal with this guy. I'm gonna get him out of here. And if you thought Panipat was intense, he has to follow that up with the Battle of Kanwa, which is where Babur has to deal with all kinds of situations here. So we are kind of headed into the final battle for India. He's taken it and he's moved into Delhi. He's got the throne. But in the south, Rana Sanga of Mewar is assembling basically every Rajput warrior, every Indian warlord that he can get his hands on. And they they come together into a force. And these guys are basically like the Spartans of India. They don't retreat. They don't surrender. They've spent their whole lives training in war. And they outnumber Babur. They're going to march on him and they're going to crush him.
And Babur's army is terrified. You have to remember, okay, not only is this army terrifying, but Babur's guys themselves are thousands of miles from home. They're from Uzbekistan. Now they're in the middle of India. The heat is melting their armor. They hate the food. And to top it all off, a famous astrologer just rode into camp and announced that the stars were literally aligned against Babur.
Yes, this astrologer. Who let this guy in? Why was he?
Exactly.
Babur should have put his head on a pike right away for that. Like, what are you doing? I guess that guy didn't like Babur either. So, yes, it's a collapse of morale. The soldiers are panicking. They're being told that that the army that's coming for them is invincible and humongous, even bigger than the one they defeated at Panipat. And you guys probably got lucky at Panipat anyway. Now, all right. Babur is going to have to fight these guys or he's going to have to retreat. And a lot of his generals or his commanders are telling him, like, we should go. Like, we came here, we looted the city. You know, we're not going to be able to hold it against this force. Rana Sanga has got this massive army coming this way. We need to get out of here. And some people in the army do. Some of them leave. Some soldiers desert and go back to Kabul because they don't want to die in this battle. But Babur is a storyteller, and he decides that he's going to give these guys a reason to fight here, right?
Maybe convince them that they're already dead. They have nothing to lose. And this seems very cinematic to me. Imagine this moment. Babur calls a meeting of the entire army. He stands up and he says, yes, the situation is dire. And then he does something unexpected. Okay, at this point, Babur was a legendary drinker. He loved his wine. And believe me, if you read his memoirs, you will know this. But he realizes that his troops think they're being punished by God. And so he orders his massive collection of gold and silver wine goblets to be brought out. And in full view of the entire army, he smashes them.
Yes. So we've mentioned this before, but Babur is Muslim. He's a devout Sunni Muslim, and Islam doesn't want you. You're not supposed to drink alcohol if you're being a good Muslim. And he, of course, like as you've mentioned, he loves wine. He likes it, and you know he's had this monster collection of drinking cups and silver goblets and things like that, and when he gets these guys together, they're all like, we're going to lose. We're outnumbered. We're going to get crushed. We should just leave and run away. He wants to hold India. So he comes out there. He has all of his gold and silver wine goblets smashed out. He cuts open all of the casks of wine that he's been storing, the bottles, all this stuff, his monster wine collection. He smashes all of it, pours all the wine into the dirt. And he says, basically, he takes the title of Ghazi, which means a warrior of the faith. He's like, look, I'm gonna give up all of this. I'm gonna be a warrior of the faith. I'm going to be a good Muslim, and God will help us. Right? He gives a speech that basically says, whoever comes to the feast of life must, before it is over, drink from the cup of death. I'd rather die with honor than live in a bad name. So let's all be good. You know, we're going to devote ourselves to our religion and to God, and we're going to win this battle.
And the speech works. The army goes from despair, giving up, let's just pack our bags and go home, to, okay, let's go fight a god and walk backwards into hell mentality. Yes.
So at Kanwa in 1527, they meet. It's a year after Panipat. And there's still this one thing that we learn a lot when we do these various stories from history is that while technology changes rapidly, the commanders don't always keep up with the times. And Rana Sanga he's an old school guy, right? He's got one eye, one arm. He's been wounded 80 times in battle. He's a sword fight kind of guy. These are not the kind of people that are really interested in adapting new tactics. The story, there was some kind of story that came out of, I believe, World War I, and they were like, the generals fight the war the way war was fought when they were soldiers, and they just don't keep up with the times. So Babur has already shown the people of India what he is going to do. He is going to put cannons on wagons. He's going to tie those wagons together. He's going to have muskets. Anybody who survived Panipat would have been able to tell that story to Rana Sanga. But he's not, for this guy, this is just, you guys were cowards. You guys just didn't fight hard enough. My men are much better than yours. I'm a better commander than Ibrahim Lodi. I will win where he didn't. And they line up and they outnumber, it's Panipat 2.0. They outnumber Babur by a lot. And Babur digs in his wagons. He sets up his musketeers or his matchlock riflemen, and Rana Sanga charges. And same thing, fire-spitting monsters, right? Magic bullets, cannons. They are devastating. The first few volleys of cannon fire are absolutely devastating to Rana Sanga. His guys keep coming on, and they get into hand-to-hand at some points with Babur's men, but they can't get through this through this wall of wagons. You can't swing a sword at the guy when he's on the other side of a wagon behind you. Maybe you could try to stick him with the spear or whatever, but that guy could back up. You've got to break these wagons. You got to get over them. You've got to do something with them. They're buried in the ground. Yeah, they're chained together. You've got to dismantle this thing before you can get past it. And the whole time you're doing that, there's a guy just beyond arm's reach from you who's shooting at you with a gun. And the Rajputs are incredibly brave and incredibly skilled, and they get into hand-to-hand a couple times with Babur, but they just move those cannons around. They wheel those cannons around on these wagons, and they fire them, and there's just nothing you can do. Rana Sanga is leading from the front with his sword. He's carried unconscious from the field. His army is broken, and Babur drives them off. He loses very few of his own guys in the process and cements himself as the undisputed ruler of northern India.
You'd think this would be the pinnacle of badassery, but actually there's a little bit more. Babur, for all of his badassery, he is still mortal, and eventually he has to go out. It's 1530. Babur is only 47, but he's lived about 10 lifetimes by now. His favorite son and heir, Humayun, falls deathly ill. The doctors have given up.
Yes.
And
Babur he's a guy who just dedicated his life to being a Sufi, to being a warrior of God. He's gonna be a good Muslim, and he does what he said he was gonna do. He wins that battle, his men back him, and he never drinks again. He's kind of devoted himself to the faith. And so he says, okay, I'm going to like basically pray to God, pray to the universe or whatever, pray to God that he'll give me my son's illness. So Humayun is about to die, right? He's on his deathbed, and Babur starts walking around. He walks around his son's sickbed 3 times saying, I've borne it away. I've borne it away. Basically like, give me the disease. I'll die instead of him. It's a thing I feel like parents say all the time, but but this is something that becomes a story that he's famous for.
According to every chronicle of the time, it worked. That night, Humayun's fever broke and he started to recover. Meanwhile, Babur's health immediately went into a tailspin, and within months, Babur was gone.
So like he traded his life for his son's, and he dies in his palace in Agra, and his final wish is to be carried back to Kabul. He's buried in a garden under the open sky. He didn't want a big Taj Mahal. He wanted to be in a place where the air was cool and the melons were good.
Yeah, and this is Babur, who started as a 12-year-old with a collapsed pigeon shed and ended as the founder of one of the greatest empires in human history.
He's a poet, a gardener, a swimmer, a conqueror, Zahir-ud-Din Muhammad Babur. one of the all-time greats. The Battle of Panipat is usually considered the beginning of the Mughal Empire, which will reign in India for hundreds of years beyond his death. People wanted to abandon Delhi. He held it, and his line will continue to hold it for centuries.
And in his own life, he was a badass, both publicly and somewhat privately. He was a badass to the very end.
Mm-hmm. So, Pat, looking at the life of a guy who was a poet king, scientist, tactical genius, really interested in incorporating new strategies and tactics, he could outswim basically anyone. He ran around in bare feet. He came from the wreckage of Samarkand, living in a cave, to the triumph at Delhi. What's the story here? What's the takeaway from the life of Babur?
Ooh, I think there are several, but one that really comes to the front is persistence is a superpower. And I think some people look at Babur and think, oh, he was successful because, I don't know, he did come from a certain amount of privilege. I don't know, he was a chosen one. Or he came from, very distinguished pedigree. But if you actually read his memoirs, his life was 90% failure. He lost his home, he lost his crown, he lost his best friends. He, as you said, Ben, he reset to zero several times. He spent years literally sleeping in the dirt.
Right, but he never gave up. He didn't quit. This first, second, third, fourth time he was kicked out of his kingdom, he didn't just become some other nameless prince. He, for over a decade, is just struggling to make ends meet. And then by the end, he's able to create an empire that will last 330 years. The Mughal Empire lasts from 1526 until 1857. So he kept trying different things and he kept wanting to learn, and he kept trying to better himself and improve things. And he developed new technologies and implemented new strategies that nobody had seen before, like cannons.
Yeah. He did not let his low points define his end point. Babur displayed adaptability. When the North failed, he went south. When swords weren't enough, he brought gunpowder. And the lesson is you aren't defeated when you lose. You're defeated when you stop looking for a new way to win.
Right. Improvise, adapt, overcome. But except with poetry about melons and better snacks. So, don't just settle for the hand you're dealt. You could change the rules and bring in cannons.
And, maybe keep a diary while you're doing it, just so everyone knows how much you missed the melons back home.
Exactly. All right. Well, Pat, thank you so much for coming on and helping me tell this story.
Thank you, Ben. It was fun.
Always great to have you here and to tell these stories together. Thanks to all of you out there for listening. We do this every week, so please check in with us next week for another story of a great badass from history.
Stay badass.
Badass of the Week is produced by High Five Content and $7 Productions. Executive producers are Dwayne Johnson, Danny Garcia, Andrew Jacobs, Hiram Garcia, Brian Gewirtz, Frankie Chaparino, and of course, me, Ben Thompson. Writing is by me and my semi-regular but always awesome co-host, Dr. Patricia Larash. Story editing by Ian Jacobs. Our mixing, music, and sound design is done by the incomparable Jude Brewer. Production support by Jean McHale-Waite. Badass of the Week is based on my website, badassoftheweek.com, where you can read all sorts of stories about other badasses. If you want to reach out with questions or ideas, you can email us at badasspodcast@badassoftheweek.com. If you like this podcast, please subscribe, follow, listen, tell your friends, and tell your enemies. And please leave us a review. If you want to support Badass of the Week, please check out our Patreon page. We'll be back next week with another one.